Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Test, Optimize, Scale. I have Tom Blair here with us today, founder, CEO of iClerk, but going to be going deep into the background and the world of AI, automation, LMM, packaging these technologies, these tools, these utilities for venture capital firms, various types of funds, investors of large scale that are managing their portfolios, everything from cap tables to fund performance to preparing for board meetings. These tools can be set up to not only streamline the process, but give a deeper analysis into the numbers and what's to come based on those measurements. Tom, really excited to have you here today and looking forward to diving into it.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
And Tom, I'm so fascinated by your background. I've learned a lot about the history of these types of tools, and some that date back to the 80s that we're still using today. Where did it all begin for you? How did you get into this world of computing and eventually AI?
I was really fortunate. I grew up in a town of 1,000 in the woods of Minnesota, and my hockey coach actually had a master's degree in computer science from the University of Texas. So it was kind of a unique opportunity for me. Apple computers came out when I was in eighth grade, I think. And so it was just part of the fabric of my existence without knowing it. And when it came time to pick a career, computer science seemed the logical way to go. I ended up in 1985 at Eastman Kodak Company, and they were, a Fortune 20 company at the time. They're at their 100-year peak. It was like going to work for Google at the time, and they paid for my master's degree, and it was a good deal for me. During that experience, I was given the opportunity to become one of the founders of the Kodak's digital imaging research labs. Kodak had invented the digital camera in 1975. So this is really the late 80s, and the quest that they sent me on was to build an image database. And so they had just purchased a photo stock agency. You can think Getty Images, where they had millions of images and no digital way of retrieving them. There were silver halide images literally stored in file cabinets. And so the quest was, how do you find a picture of a boy in a blue boat from 5 million images? And so during my graduate school work, I focused on that, which ended up, I fell in love with using the concept of using neural networks to do semantic image recognition on these images. And so that was my first entree into AI, and I studied animal intelligence, the cognitive philosophy, and the whole package of studying what intelligence means and what this concept of AI, where it would emulate different human functions, vision and speech and reasoning and all these different, the robotics aspects. And so that was the beginning. It was almost 40 years ago now. When you look back, it's easy to connect all the dots, right? When you're blazing that path forward through life, you can't see the future, and you have the trepidation and the worry, and technology moves a lot faster than human processes. So as I follow my career, there was really significant events and experiences that I had that affected iClerk 30 years later. I ended up in Cambridge in the UK working for Autonomy. They used Bayesian inference algorithms to do text classification and semantic image recognition in some cases. And then in the early 2000s, I was back in the US, and I was at Sybase on their corp dev team, and we bought a company out of Japan called Dejima. It was founded by Babak Hojat. And they had 6 customers, and one of the customers was Stanford Research Institute, SRI, and they used that Dejima tool as the foundation. It was a multi-agent system, and they used it to create Siri. And so watching that whole discovery and development, it was really slow. One of the things I've learned is in my career, computational horsepower has gone up more than 1 million times. And we went from measuring data in the gigabytes to zettabytes today. So it's literally, humans aren't good at exponentials, but even when I look back, it's hard for me to understand how much has changed in my career, right? All right, so fast forward into the late teens, 20 teens, and I started an AI-based weather company. And this is one of the lessons I've learned in my career it's intellectual arbitrage. I think Nathan Miravold of Microsoft came up with that term, where you take concepts from one industry and you apply them to another. And it's that boundary between different industries where opportunity really arises.
Right.
And so in this case, we had purchased a company that ran, I think it was 40% of the nation's snowplows. And it used these, multiple, they called it ensemble processing. So you do multiple parallel processes you run different weather models. You'll run a regional model and a national model and a local model, and you use different sensors. And so you use all these different ensemble processing to predict pavement temperature in front of a snowplow. And then you could prescribe different chemical treatments on that. Just at that time, Monsanto bought Climate Corp and for $983 million, I think. And my epiphany, or the intellectual arbitrage, if you will, was that those physics equations, the transfer of energy and mass between the atmosphere and the soil layer, could be applied to agriculture as well. If you move that algorithm from the road 50 meters to the left, you have an ag tech application. And that's what we did. We, instead of prescribing using these multiple AI models and reinforcement learning processes to predict pavement temperature, we would use it to trigger different events in the field: when to plant, when to harvest, when to apply nutrients. And we did that by modeling the growth of crops, of the water and how it moves through different layers of soil, of the weather and the local, the radiation and the rain and the wind and how that affects all that. And it was a really good experience for me. I wasn't a weather guy, but I was an AI guy. And this was really the first real application that I could see where it was applying these tools in real time every day. And it affected all of us, So from that experience and all those dots that I connected behind that, I started my last company, which was with two partners from Iowa who were cattle farmers of all things. And so we built an AI-based feed optimization engine that would optimize nutrients and all the things that go into feed, and consider the cow genetics and the weather and the pharma that goes into it. Animal pharma is just as big as human pharma, I came to find out. And the distribution of those nutrients and pharma through a multi-tier distribution channel down to the farmer meant that nobody had visibility into the health or performance of that herd from afar. And so having a feed optimization system that could track all of that, what was being fed, when, at what rate, what's the health of the cattle, all of that, really allowed these farm and nutrient companies to have a real-time vision into the herd, or real-time analysis of what's going on in that herd. And so we sold that in 2020 to Zoetis, the large animal health company that was split out of Pfizer in 2013. And so that's when I was finally able to step on the gas and start this iClerk platform that we have now. So iClerk is a multi-agent system. It was originated to do price discovery on commodities. So each agent would focus on an individual commodity, and it would set the context. So if it's grain, for instance, how much grain is being grown, what type of grain, where is the grain being grown, all the different dynamics of that. who are the distributors of that, what companies are involved. And it's really a real-time operation to keep an agent aware of all these independent variables for that one commodity. And so when you start to look at modeling multiple commodities, you build this engine that can suck up any type of data. It can do complex multi-step processing, and it can do some sort of, analytics that would, in this case, price discovery. So since then, we have focused less on price discovery for commodities, and we've pointed this agent network at other finance problems. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today, this iClerk's ability to do things like LP reporting or due diligence or some of the other things that we'll talk about today.
Tom, I couldn't take enough notes and am so intrigued. How did you determine, hey, I want to focus on finance problems, from 80s Minnesota, going through 5 million photos, looking for the boy in the blue, to everything from AI, weather, agriculture, animal pharma. Yeah. Opened my eyes up to that vertical, and I can understand how it's even bigger. But you've watched all of these different worlds evolve from GB to ZB at that. How did you determine, hey, this is the problem, this is where I need to focus, and emerge into the world of finance?
I never had the benefit of being an expert in any one industry. Part of what I skipped over in my career path was I spent almost 11 years at Sybase, which was a database company that was founded in 1986. I was pretty early there. I started Sybase Japan and Sybase China, all the Asian countries. I moved to Europe and did their mobile embedded computing division. So I worked cross industry at a database company for a decade. And in cross-border, I worked in more than 30 countries at Sybase. And so through that experience of not being a specialist, but working in a horizontal capacity, you learn to be a good listener, for one, and to identify lowest common denominator type functions in these businesses. And that's really been the path of AI as well, where iClerk found its product market fit and its focus by literally hundreds, if not thousands, of conversations. I have called everyone I've ever met in 40 years of my life. You just swallow your pride and dial for dollars. I played hockey for 50 years, and it's forechecking and shots on net, right? And so you just have to pepper that goalie, and once in a while you get lucky. And I found that to work for me. I've had conversations, pilots, and heavy discussions across medical, across legal. We have a number of education customers across large, ag tech companies from my background, people like, Caterpillar, or large insurance companies, manufacturers, insurance, all of these sectors we've had conversations with. And what I've found is that half of the conversations you have, people are just not ready to adopt or recognize the value of AI. And so one of the attributes I have from hunting AI for 35 years is you need to be patient on some of these pursuits. But at this point, I don't have that patience, and so it's the other 50% of the market that I'm after, and finance. Ironically, finance and education are two of the early adopters of AI that we've seen, and so finance, there's a lot of opportunity. People are expensive. This is a intellectual labor replacement tool. It takes high value functions that professionals are doing, doctors or teachers or financiers, and taking the mundane, repetitive, but important work off their plate. And so the best example is where we found product market fit. with working with venture capital firms and private equity firms and family offices to automate their LP reporting. And so that's just one part of the job of an analyst, right? They have to find companies to invest in. Once they invest in the companies, they have to manage them on a quarterly basis and find out how they're doing, how their financial performance is, how their corporate performance, what's going well, what's going not. And that takes a lot of time in a portfolio with, tens or 30 or up to 50 or 80 companies in a portfolio. That can consume 10, 15, 20% of an analyst's time. And so that data collection process is a real pain for these industries. The work that's done with those data elements are also very important, right? You can't make mistakes. You can't have the AI hallucinate, right? It's important work. And that goes, again, medical, legal, education, all the professional classes. And so you have these requirements for multi-step processing that you have to meet. And then the last part is the communication. You have to communicate via spreadsheets in some cases. You might want PDF reports on individual companies. You might be generating a presentation for your LPs that consists of a portfolio overview. And so those three steps, the data collection, the analysis, and the creation of the presentation material, are all very labor intensive. And yes, as I said, it accounts for, at clearly 10% of operating expense in any of these firms. Even if it's already built, it takes time to move data from spreadsheets or from CRMs or from Zoom calls that you're having, wherever the data is coming from. That's the problem we solve. And so in this quest to find early adopter industries, we found the juice in finance.
I find it's all a matter of what you do with the data. And finance, they're using the data, let's say, to bring on more limited partners, LPs, investors into their fund. They're able to actualize a result with the utilization of that data quicker than other verticals. Sometimes I see founders and they're evaluating a new tool and thinking it's neat, but that application of the data, I think, goes a long way. Like we've found ourselves as a marketing agency in fintech. I think it's so interesting that you said finance and education have been the strongest adopters. And the nature of my question was, you've been able to find all of these different industries where you've been able to focus your skill set, and finance, you've found, hey, this is very impactful, especially for the adoption of AI. And I imagine you've had that resistance your whole career where, hey, this company doesn't want to use computers yet. This company doesn't want to use software. This company does. Right now, it's AI and where this acceleration of technology has taken us. And like you said, it's moving faster. I know we were talking about the past 36 months in our last conversation, and it's been warp speed from what we've been able to see from the marketing angle. And I want to add one thing. I've worked with over 500 different founders, and it is absolutely repetitive, mundane, but important to put together this information. I mean, if we're talking about audits, due diligence, as a marketer, if I'm told, hey, we have to get through these audits, these filings, these different processes, I'm computing delay. Hey, this is going to take longer than they anticipate. It may not get done at all. There's going to be different third parties brought to the table. Some are going to overcharge. Some aren't going to do what they say they're going to. So to be able to have these type of automated solutions, again, to make the process move faster, but have it come out in a more detailed fashion, a way that's easier to consume for the other side. Because like you mentioned, you can't make mistakes here. And what you can do with the information can produce significant amounts of capital. It could bring in all different types of strategic partnerships. It could be used for mergers and acquisitions, and relatively speaking, massive amounts of monetary value.
Yep. So what's unique about this wave of technology is that is it's a complete reevaluation of the reasoning that goes on in a business. And what I mean by that is um, we talk to these customers and they do see the potential of doing things faster and more efficiently for less money, right? They get that. Where they get caught up is how to get there. People don't typically have, we focus on the SMB market from 10 million to $1 billion of assets under management, right? For a reason. The larger companies are employing, they have the balance sheet, they have the large consultancies, these consultancies are putting up huge numbers for AI right now. And that's because they're working with the Fortune 5,000. We work with the unfortunate 5,000, the people that don't have the balance sheet, they don't have the intellectual capability or the skills to get there, but they know they need it. And that's that sweet spot. What's really unique about agents, about AI agents, is that it focuses on one task. You don't need to solve all your problems right away. You start small. And I'll use this example of LP reporting for that. You build the whole business case on the elimination of the cost of that reporting. Our first customers, they had approximately 4 people spending about 160 hours per quarter, approximately 10% of their operating expense on this LP reporting. So 4 people spending 160 hours over the course of 3 months to generate these reports, to track down the data, to manipulate the data, and to generate the reports. And so we can build the AI agent business case just on that. We will work with you over the course of 1 quarter to automate your LP reporting. It will match, you'll hand crank it at the same time. It'll match exactly what we create, and then it's automated. And so you start with one agent, something like that is, how do I collect the data? What data manipulation is going on? What does your output look like? And we get that complete. And then what we find is these customers find another agent and 5 more agents and 10 more agents. They start to see that if I can quantify it into one set of work, one task, one workflow, they can get their head around it and they can start to see, they can count the number of hours they're spending. So if the humans are spending 160 hours and a fully loaded human, in this case, is $150,000 a year with benefits and everything, you can start to understand what your cost of reporting is. And so we typically make it easy. We're not trying to make all our money on one agent. We charge 1/10 of the cost of whatever you're currently spending on. So if it's costing you $100,000 a year to do your LP reporting, we'll do it for 10, right? And so it's that that narrowing of focus that AI agents provide. That's one of the benefits. The other real benefit that you get out of these is the implementation. Technology changes, humans don't, right? Humans hate change. They don't like to change processes. They don't like new systems. They don't like to, they go on the same freeway every day to work. They don't deviate from their plan, right? And so in that type of environment, it's really hard to sell enterprise software. It has the effect of lengthening your sales cycles. I've worked in finance, decades of my career, and you're talking in some cases 6 quarters or 8 quarters to close a large enterprise deal, years of time. And as a startup, I just don't have that luxury, right? And so the beauty of these agent systems is we can implement them typically in about 100 man hours. We see between 70 and 150 man hours per implementation to identify the data, replicate the workflow, and then emulate the output. We can implement with no changes to existing systems. So all your existing infrastructure just stays in place. You don't need to touch it or change it or update it or integrate it. You leave your data in place. So this technology is typically, what you do is you build a vector index and we build a knowledge graph. So you have things like identity and memory over time, right? And so those types of tools allow you to leave the data in place. And so if I have spreadsheets in a repository on SharePoint and I'm using, some wonky CRM and I've got, a whole set of 500-page PDF documents sitting in a file, we can just point at that, index it all, make it traceable and provable, so we can ensure our accuracy. And the last thing is we don't really require a lot of interaction from the end customer. We can do it for just by talking to them for about an hour a week. So the point is, these agents provide focus and a very low impact way of leveraging them. We can do it for free in 90 days with no changes to your systems and no impact to your data. And that's a profound difference in implementation than I've ever seen in my entire career.
It makes a lot of sense. And a bit of what's in the background for me and, why AI over the top professionals, the top experts in their field. I'm an advertising guy. I position it towards finance, towards capital raising, but just to perform my own little intellectual arbitrage. I love that term, by the way. I really learned about AI through advertising exchanges. And there's these programmatic media buying exchanges that optimize media buys in the matter of milliseconds. So we both get to the same ad unit. It determines what ad for me, what ad for you, and across millions of lines of data. I could tell you, 50 different targeting filters offhand, but I can't tell you a million. And it's optimizing off, day, time, week, weather, current events, all of these different things pulled in to find the right ad for the right person at the right time. So when I hear you talk about identity, when I hear you talk about memory and the accuracy around it, what I'm envisioning is something that goes beyond human capabilities.
Yep.
From the top finance pros to
Yep.
what is possible and taking it in from all of these different data sources, from the CRM to perhaps project management tools to all different types of analysis and reporting, and pulling things that go beyond just our own gut response, which is great, but gives us far more ability with these tools.
Yep. Yep. That's right. It'll take a while. We're not there yet. All the agents that we're designing right now, almost all the agents, we have a human in the loop because humans still don't trust the AI.
Sure.
One of the main features of our system is everything is traceable. So any data element, any report, any piece of information on a generated report, you can hover and see where its source is, and you can click on it and go back to the original source, right? Any derived data, people just don't go with the LLM's a black box. It just works. And that does not work for these professional classes. You need a Turing machine, basically, something that's deterministic, that you can measure the inputs and the outputs and know what's going on, right?
Yes.
And so that's effectively what we've done is taken this complex multi-step data process where it uses many models. It will process numerical information, make sure you get their numbers right using one type of model. It'll use language models for another. The point is, these systems evolve. You have to abstract the technology from the end requirements of the user, right? Data changes, data types changes, systems changes. The LLMs change weekly. Different models are based on cost, performance, jurisdiction, where you are in the world, what you're processing. All these determine what types of tools you need to solve a problem for that specific industry. We don't get to choose that, so we abstract that from the end user. They can just say, well, we need this, without ever having to worry about AI. I rarely talk about AI when I'm talking to customers. The beauty of agents is that you get to get down into this conversation about reasoning and what's working for that person, and it allays their fears about technology and the change rate and all of that, and it really starts to focus on, well, where am I spending 15 minutes a day moving data or doing something that I don't want to do, right? And so you really need to get down into that humanistic nature and away from the technology for this to work. Because of that, it'll take time. I think it'll take 5 years or so to get through this reimagination of all these workflows that we're going through on a global basis right now.
Feature the function. You talk to the wrong decision maker about AI and it goes over their head. They could be thinking about what they read about in the news and fears about AI and different theories. I imagine, some audiences hear AI and start listening a little closer. But in general, as a technologist, feature the function and be able to show the inherent value through those details.
Yeah, and if you listen to the customer, they'll tell you what they don't want to do. So for teachers, it's grading, and they don't want to have to grade. They want to have a higher level of analysis across the classroom so they can see which students need help on what topics. The same goes for finance agents like this, is that if I have 8 portfolios and 200 companies, I'm only looking for the noise. What companies have not submitted their data, which ones don't have their reports, and so it's that dirty work, that toil that you try to identify in these places, and then the acceptance rates goes up because an analyst wants to analyze. An analyst doesn't want to chase down revenue numbers from 20 different startups, right? So it's a much easier sale if you can identify that pain. And it's easier said than done. It's taken hundreds of conversations for me to get here. But that's why we chose the finance industry, is that there's identifiable pain, there's inefficiencies there. You can really use these tools to help the analysts become analysts and not and not data movers, right?
VC space, private equity, it's known for having professionals in their early career working the late nights, extreme amounts of hours analyzing and doing that laborsome, repetitive work. So this should allow for the ability to capture that in a much more rapid succession of time, more accuracy, more projections, more modeling, more that can be done with the actual performance versus just the
That's right.
work
You
that's
take
needed.
out that toil of the reporting and allows them to focus on other things. And that's part of our business plan as well, right? We have this LPR, the LP reporting agent, but then we also have, because you've indexed all of the data at the client, you've built these indexes and these knowledge graphs, you can now rapidly build other agents. So I can do things like, it's a natural open-ended BI tool. And so I can just do open-ended questions across all my portfolios and say, what are the 10 companies with the least amount of runway across all my portfolios? You don't need IT or a Tableau programmer to generate a BI report anymore. I can now just use natural language and do experimentation, discovery. I can generate reports. I can generate graphs, all in natural language. That's what our I-Clerk platform does. It eases all of that. And so now you have the ability to do discovery on top of it with no new integration costs. You can start to build due diligence tools that do either top down or bottom up due diligence. So if I'm a healthcare VC and I'm going to filter on, I only want to see healthcare companies, I can automatically, have an AI that will do that due diligence and apply the filters and identify the KPIs that you're looking for, right? I can start to build in custom workflows where if I have an analyst per fund that's managing all the reporting and then communicating with the controller level, that's doing all the financial, making sure all the numbers are correct and accurate, and then a CFO level, right? And so currently, where it works, you have a very human labor intensive hierarchy of approvals and acknowledgements and data movement and all that stuff. And so as part of this re-reasoning that goes on in these businesses, you're not just replicating the task that the human did. You're able to start to rethink how the business does does business, how it moves data. Do I need an analyst per fund now? Do I need a controller layer to communicate with the analysts and do all that negotiation? If it's traceable and provable and accurate and repeatable and reliable, then even though we have all this human in the loop built in right now, in the future it will become more automated, and we'll start to see how these job functions themselves change, right? So it's an evolutionary process. I don't expect it to happen now, but it gives you the chance to learn along with the customer.
Sure. I don't know if we're ready for removing the human from the process quite yet. And just relating back to advertising, you have a media buyer, a media
Even if it's the DMV, really, you want humans in the DMV.
We'll make an exception for the DMV. We could start that now.
But you can do this with every industry. You can,
sure.
That's what I'm saying is every sector across every country, every company needs to be rethought.
Yes. Right. And rethought, right now, I look at it as if you have someone who is experienced and really, top of class, putting in the information and getting it back from the AI, they're going to have a stronger result than someone who is not knowledgeable in the space. They may accept things that are subpar, inaccurate at that, or just missing some of the nuances that an industry expert would have. I understand it's coming, and that will be replaced. But right now, I find that two people using AI won't get the same results. So if you have one of the top finance executives putting their eyes on what's coming back out, it's probably going to be of more use than an entry-level intern. You're still involving the human and allowing this to operate as a tool that can function to produce much stronger results. And like you said, put the energy into the right places. And I absolutely agree that this is coming to every space.
You got to play to win.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And, Tom, for people who are listening in, what recommendations would you have for them towards their own growth? I use the word test. I look at it, growth as a series of tests. Maybe the shots on goal analogy that you're using, impressed by over 50 years of hockey, by the way.
That's the problem.
But you'll get some good ones in there.
Exactly.
What should they test towards their own growth? This could be towards their own development and creation of AI tools. This could be the actual application of what you're doing and towards their own finance and reporting, or growing a company at that. But what would you recommend founders for taking the test?
Is top of my game. I'm more enthusiastic sitting here at age 60, or as enthusiastic as I was when I was starting Kodak at age 20. I really enjoy it. Gives you the benefit of helping people. You always get to live on the cutting edge, and so you have to have that enthusiasm and that taste for it, and that's something that has evolved with me. The other thing is patience. I didn't, when you're young, nobody has patience. You can't see the future. You don't have that perspective of time. But what I've learned is just, I studied neural networks in the 80s. I mean, I remember my professor telling me, I went to RIT in New York at Rochester Institute of Technology. Mm-hmm. My graduate school advisor said, don't bet your career on neural networks. And those words have always stuck with me because he's been so right and so wrong. It's all a matter of timing, right? He was right for 30 years and now he's wrong, right? So I guess he was right. I shouldn't have bet, and I didn't bet my career on it. But so patience, I think blockchain is a good example. I'm a database guy. Grok blockchain. It's great for certainly financial transactions, things like copywriting, and as a system of record, it's a great tool. But it's going to take 30 years of adoption. Mark my words. It is not going to happen this year or next. So you do have to have patience and that enthusiasm that carries you across the nuclear winters.
Well said there. It's funny you mentioned blockchain as you were talking about AI and how you don't always use the word in the product demo. I heard the same thing in blockchain. We've done a lot of marketing there. The first rule of enterprise blockchain is you do not mention blockchain.
That's right. That's right. Right. And it takes, especially as a technologist, it takes so long to get to the point where you understand the problem well enough that you don't have to talk about the tools, right?
Yep.
And that is an evolution and again, patience. Another thing I've learned, and this is, there's a big wave towards back to work now. And I spent decades in an office. I've been in, I spent 5 years in Japan where I couldn't understand the languages just sitting in meetings. I mean, I've done my time of meetings. I have found that, especially as a startup, so I like to hire smart people, right? Smart people are expensive. So I hire smart, cold people. And my whole career, I've hired, even to this day, I've got people in Edmonton and I've had people in Ipswich in the UK and people in Rochester, New York, and places where it's cold and dark in the winter. And so they work more. And I only say that anecdotally, but I do hire a lot of cold engineers. And so I found that uh, the team is essential, and we all know that. But you just now with this company where it's ground up, built by me, I've taken great care in picking individuals. It doesn't matter really their experience. I hire a lot of sophomore and sophomores in college, young people. I hire old people. I hire people all over the world. So it's hire well, as that's always the common adage. Um,
Enthusiasm, patience,
yeah,
hire well.
yeah, and
What?
stay curious.
Yeah.
You know, stay curious. I've started 3 companies after the age of 50, right? And so I did. It's hard to start a company, right? In my 20s, I started my first company when I was at Kodak, and they gave me a cease and desist letter, and they had 12 lawyers in the room, and I was employed by Kodak, and they were paying for my school, and they were like, well, you can do your startup or you can quit. And so I quit. And so I didn't get a chance to do a startup because I had babies and life and mortgages and, life. And through my 20s and 30s and 40s, I traveled the world and I had great fun, but I couldn't do a startup. And then I was fortunate enough to find my way in my 50s. So, like I said, it's my third startup. I'm 60 years old now, and I am more cranked about the future than I ever have been. So
Which is
keep.
so inspiring for me. I'm not quite there yet, and hear different stories, from different people and ways of thinking. And you broke it down for me in a prior conversation of, once you get past these points, you have more time. You can put your energy into things you care about, really see them accelerate, not just have to do what's in front of you. It's like you said, having that patience and keeping the enthusiasm, keeping the curiosity all the way through. In terms of optimization, it's not working right out of the gate. How do you pivot? How do you improve? How do you manage to a point of effectiveness? How do you do enough forechecking?
Well, so we did start this as a commodity pricing system, bit of an intellectual exercise. The original problem was, how do you price a cow? Because a cow is a complex object with skinny cows, grain, fat cows, ethanol, and fuel, right? And so we built it on
Right.
this really abstract concept, and then started having conversations. And so, we pivot is a strong word. If you look at the patents we have behind this company, the technology and the specification and the architecture hasn't changed. What's changed is how you describe it, and the application nomenclature that you use to describe it around that. So the pivot has come from, it's more of a redirection as far as I'm concerned, based on customer conversation. And everyone knows this, but you just got to dial for dollars. Even
Yep.
on for 100 phone calls, you might get 3 or 4 that end up progressing. So you just need to continuously reach out to these folks. The the other optimization that I found is really just what we do is once a month we get all of our customers and our prospects that we've engaged in the last year on a half-hour call to show them our current developments, to get feedback directly from them, find out how their, the last generation of our technology is working, and just really, because we're not the subject matter experts, we're the AI experts, just really hold on to those customers and prospects tight, build that network, swallow your pride, have those conversations, because they are your product managers. And so it's more of an evolution than a pivot or
Yep.
an optimization, is what I've found. You just got to, keep your head above the water, don't drown, and, swim for shore. So.
And be relentless, have that grit. Hearing you say, hey, you just got to put in the time, dial for dollars, have the
There's no magic to it,
conversations. Yeah. I
There's
mean,
really
I look at people who type things into Chat GPT and are looking for shortcuts and don't want to put in the actual energy. And what you're saying is, hey, I'm an expert at this and I still put in these steps because I need to do whatever it takes to hit
I
the
do.
goals.
I take notes every day. I have 35 years of notebooks where I've tracked every thought, and so it's just it's you always hear these adages, but it really is a marathon. It's not a sprint, right?
Mhm.
I mean, when I even think that I've been in pursuit of AI for 40 years, that sounds ridiculous because I'm still 18 in my head. So it's just play the long game. Be nice to people, because it's amazing how many people I've called that I haven't talked to in 35 years. And, you want them to answer your call. So it matters, right?
So glad you say that. I have worked with founders raising capital that mentioned something very similar. Of I was calling people from college, fraternity, roommates, neighbors. I haven't spoken to them in 30 years.
Yeah.
And that really is a telltale of that, commitment. And only so many founders are able to see success when you look at the statistics. I think that's a differentiator right there. And speaking to that, what about scale? Any tips, any examples? I know that's what we're all playing for. How do you scale?
I run pretty lean, so I measure. So we sell per agent. Agents are subscriptions; they're $2,000 a month, and it allows the customer to adapt and evolve with that subscription over time. So as we learn
Right.
together, they can change it. And so we found two vectors of scale. One is the land and expand, is that everyone we sell an agent to, they find 2 or 3 or 10 more. And so we found every one of our customers is re-upping with new agents. So you have that customer care vector. And then what we've also found is that most of our current competitors scale based on the size of their customers. So if it's a venture firm with $1 billion AUM, they'll pay more than if they are at a venture firm with 100 million AUM. We've found that AI, that doesn't really work for AI anymore. So the scale we found is a functional scale where you can sell more agents with different functions over time. And that opens new markets for you. So time and opportunity. It's an ego-driven response to get on a podcast and talk about yourself, but and I thank you for the opportunity for that. So stay patient and curious, my friends. That's my words of advice.
You heard it here. Stay patient and curious. Definitely encourage you to take Tom up on his invitation and get in touch with them. And Tom, I feel more educated in AI and the history and what it takes to actually launch one of these products effectively today. So really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Jason. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. And thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time. Take care.